Shabbat Shalom. Today we're going to go into the study and we are developing the idea that that the Bible has been talking about in the book of Leviticus. It is the book of how to develop yourself into a priest in the olden days, and yet it has repercussions and consequences for our days as well. If you can translate the tasks of a priest with the tent of the meetings and the temple in Jerusalem, if you can translate that into the times of today without those outward situations. The leading question today how to develop yourself, your priesthood, from a freedom fighter into an accountability bearer. And there is a difference. If you're a freedom fighter and you live in a country where your freedom is stolen from you, please go ahead and fight, as God will lead you and may He protect you. If you live in a country where you don't have this, then sometimes freedom is only seen in terms of I have the right to say what I want to say and I'm doing it anyway and it doesn't matter to me. I don't care what other people think and how I say it and whatever. There, accountability comes more into the picture, which goes for every priest in the faith. So, with that in mind, we're going to read our first text of today, the first of the two Torah texts that we are presented with. Two, because today is not only the Shabbat with the name Parashat Shemini, for the text called Shemini because the Bible goes to talk about the 8th day. That is what Shemini means, 8th. But also the Shabbat Parah, which is the Hebrew for a Shabbat on which we pay attention to the role of the par, which is the male cow, and then the para is the feminine cow, and the usage of that cow as the Bible is prescribing it. So we're talking about Shemini on the 8th day. And this is taken from the situation where the priests, meaning the high priest Aaron and his 4 sons, were in the tent of meeting, and they were there for the full 7 days. And on the 8th day there was their inauguration, Shemini, Yom Shemini. There's so much to do on this digit 8, this number 8, and this number 50 that is connected with it, that there is no coincidence. This is done on purpose. I'm sure that the Bible does that. In order to make that more clear, let's look at one of the slides where you see the number 8 equals 7 plus 1. What it means is that we have 7 days in the week, and the Bible is now in this text adding 1 extra day. 7 plus 1 is not the 7 again. Normally it is so. You start on Sunday as the first day of the week. You go through the week. The last day of the week is Shabbat, it says, the holy day of Shabbat, which is in our days the Saturday. And then comes the first day of the week again. No, in this case it is 7 plus 1, not the 7, the first 7 again in a repetition, but an extra day. Cannot be, because the day only counts 7 days. That's on purpose. So there is an extra day. 50, same situation. Then we're talking about 7 times 7 when the Bible is describing the year of Jubilee. 7 times 7 years, 49 years, and in the 50th year there is an extra year, which is an extra outside the cycle of 7 times 7. Those numbers, 8 and the number 50, that's what it is about. And both have in themselves, in the 8 has the 7 plus 1, the 50 also has the 7 times 7 plus 1. So there is a common situation where both have this 7 inside them and the plus 1. 7 is the amount of days of the week. 7 times 7 is the amount of the week, Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, which you find in Leviticus 23. You find it described, both of them there. 7 is the basis of our week schedule. There's week. The year is divided up into weeks, 52 weeks, sort of. And after 7 days, I said it already, the week counting starts again. To add 1 day to the 7 days is going further than the earthly counting of the week days. Normally, after the 7, the first day of the week starts again, as I said. But not so in this situation. On the 8th day, the picture that is growing out of this description is a spiritual image, which is that on the 8th day you reach from the earthly world, the mortal world, where we have weeks of 7 days, the next world, the heavenly reality. And the number 1 added to the 7 is an expression of that. On a weekly basis, we already realize this. In a little bit different situation, we have 6 days, as you know, and there is then the 7th day, which is the holy of the 7th day, of the 7 days, I mean. So there are 6 days of usual, of common, followed by the holiness of the Shabbat, the 7th day of dedication, of heavenly level, but then on an earthly level, because we're within the 7 days. 6 plus 1 is 7. But 7 plus 1, meaning 8, means 7 earthly days, including Shabbat, followed by a heavenly day, the 8th day, which is much more heavenly, much more spiritual, on a higher level than is normally the situation. And the Bible is the book of differences in level and differences in holiness, differences in spiritual level, spiritual growth. On the 8th day, heaven is there for grabs, to say it with full respect. The Lord, closer to us than on Shabbat, and definitely closer than on the 6 days of the labor. Everybody, definitely Moshe and Aaron, and also the rest of the population, was all of them were on that day, they were on a higher spiritual level. There is a comparison, because the circumcision for Jewish boys of 8 days old, and people who feel attracted to do the same simply because the Bible didn't make any division and distinction between the Jewish boys and the other boys. You can read this in the Bible, it's too much for now. With this circumcision, there's that same presentation of the 8th day. It's the 8th day on which the young child, boy, will be circumcised. It's not for nothing that at the day of the circumcision, we believe in Judaism that on that day the prophet Elijah is present. Elijah, the prophet, in Hebrew called Eliyahu Hanavi, most probably the most popular prophet in the Bible. His life was, this is described in 1st and 2nd Kings in the Bible, including the miracles, including the spiritual battle, spiritual warfare, the inspiration which he caused, and his dramatic ascension up to the heavenlies. According to tradition, Elijah comes to earth often to help Jews who are in despair and in misery, in crisis. Or he comes to reveal interesting secrets of Torah to our great sages and to small leaders of congregation. He is also present at as I said, at the circumcision of the Jewish baby boys. And each year, Elijah is there on the Pesach Seder, the celebration of the Jewish feast of Easter, because at that moment you see the spirituality of this prophet, which you should read. Take time to read about Elijah, and you will see what I mean. The prophet Malachi in English tells us that it is Elijah the prophet who will announce the coming of Messiah. Now you might think, well, this is too much, I cannot see this, this is typically Jewish and this is typically not Bible and stuff like that. It's perhaps you need to do something about your vision, your imagination and your knowledge. Look in New Testament in Matthew chapter 17, where announcement is already made in the last verses of Matthew 16, and then in Matthew 17, where this same prophet Elijah, together with Moses, is visiting Yeshua and three of his closest disciples, where those three, Moses and Elijah and Yeshua, are talking together. So think about these things, because it will increase your spiritual consciousness, your spiritual level, your frame, your faith frame that you allow yourself to have things in. Don't make it too small. It's larger. It should be larger than you might realize. Where sometimes, if it is made too small and too crampy, holy situations are being shot at from a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience. To get yourself occupied with these things is so much safer than, and I'm going to talk about this for a while also today, than to put all your insecurities and your knowledge and all the things you know on Facebook, because you feel like what you have to say is the truth. We have this situation, there is a change in the whole world. Leaders of congregations like me, with colleagues all over the world, in Israel, in England, in the United States, in Latin America, we say, what is going on in this world where people are all of a sudden so insecure and so aggressive almost? First, Corona, with all kinds of fake news situations, where other people say, no, this is true, and other people say, no, it's not. And then we read in the newspapers, and the people who have their fake news on Corona say, oh no, the news on CNN and in the newspapers is all fake news. It's not real anymore. Where is the common sense? Where is the clear look? Corona time, where all the fake news was sent through without any distinction, without any discretion. Now the war in Ukraine, where some very ill-informed people accuse Europe and NATO of the war, of what Putin is doing, while you should know what a war criminal Putin really is, and how he's treating his soldiers, how 8 of his generals have already died, and some of the military higher echelon is dying because their soldiers are killing them purposely because of what they're ordered to do, meaning shooting at innocent people. Exactly the same thing in World War II, where people even tried to kill Hitler and it never happened, unfortunately. Where people accused the Jews of everything that went on in this World War II and said that they were the cause of it. Now, in our times, you read YouTube, you read Facebook, and you read grandmas and grandpas who accuse the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and they accuse him of everything that's going on, in what in reality is the gruesome crimes of Mr. Putin of Russia. Crimes against innocent children, crimes against people who are hiding and afraid, people who carry their together, father and mothers, carrying their dead baby girl in their pajamas to the grave of that girl. Crimes against young Russian soldiers, knowing that they will die because Ukraine is saying, stop, no further. It's not Europe, it's not NATO, it's the little witches behind their safe computer screens, spreading their poison and division and insecurity and confusion, deception. They are being a help to Putin because they have become accessories to him. That freedom of opinion is not something you should abuse. You don't have this kind of freedom because you're adding to the insecurity and adding to the lies. With that kind of set of opinions, you don't belong in good congregations, where our congregation is one where we are watching and are really keeping a watch on what's sound and what is sick. I'm sorry to say these things, it has become a little political, but this is the reality of our world we live in. And so much more spiritual growth and blessing comes from the text in the Torah of today, which I'm not going to make as a sweet message, but applying to the situation of Corona and Ukraine, because that's what it belongs. There's where it belongs. Torah is a very practical text among spiritual. It's also very practical for things on earth, where priests underwent, and we also undergo a spiritual consecration and dedication, being an example for personal priesthood for all of us. Don't defile your priesthood if you ever had it. Like the two sons of Aaron, making themselves guilty with a strange fire, they became witches in a sense, and God says, you don't belong in this congregation. It was a stupid choice those two made, and you see them being burned by the same fire that came to consume the sacrifice that was on the altar. In Leviticus 9:24 we read 9:24. I'm going back to that text. I don't know if you can see it. 9:24. I don't think so, but then I'll read it to you. It says, fire came forth from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat upon the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. The people had a higher spiritual level at that moment than before, recognized in the fire the hand of the Lord. It's a way for God to manifest himself. There are at least 10 ways in which God is manifesting himself, not 3, but many more to see him and to recognize him in your life, in situations where you might say, God is helping me. Praise God for that. Dietary laws, food laws, are also part of this text of today. Why? What are they doing here in order to enrich the life and the practice of priests? Well, I can tell you this: kosher is not because of health. Don't say, oh, that's people didn't know it, but it's health. It's not. It has nothing to do with health. Poisonous snakes and scorpions are not in the list of forbidden animals, so they're kosher, but you're not supposed to eat them. And yet they're not, don't have the tab, don't eat this. Poisonous plants, poison ivy, not unkosher, it's also kosher. And you see, kosher has nothing to do with health. Unclean animals are also creation of God. So why are they unclean? The answer is they are unclean for the people who say, I want to practice my obedience to God, because that's what it is. So dietary laws help in 3 main points. You can add issues to them. One is obedience, where you train your obedience. God says don't eat it, and I say, okay, I won't. You don't say don't eat a scorpion, but I know that I shouldn't touch that 10 feet pole. So one is training, is obedience. The second one is training for my soul, because once I'm doing this, I'm closer to God because I'm doing what He says that I should do and not do. And the third point is learning to be different from, there is a mistake in the text I believe, learning to be different from the nations. And you might say, what's wrong with the nations? Well, if those nations have something wrong, be different from the nations. If Russia gives a wrong example, don't be like Russia. If you say, well, Russia is just taking care of things because they have the right to get Ukraine back, don't say it. You don't know history. If you know history, you know that Ukraine, at a certain point in history, was given the right by a Russian president to become an independent country. No blood, no weapons, they were given that right. Like Israel was given the right in 1948 to become a state. A democratic decision was made. What Putin is doing is reversing and saying, oh, history is so nice, but it's not that he says it. No, he shoots people, he shoots innocent people. We won't shoot innocent people, but he does it. Torah is the yoke of heaven. The yoke is light. We need a yoke because it helps us to go the path that we need to walk. And there is somebody on the vehicle that is guiding us while we have this yoke and pull the vehicle that needs to be pulled, the vehicle of our lives, the course of our lives. Torah is the yoke of heaven. In the New Testament, Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 that Torah is a spiritual document, and you need to be spiritual in order to appreciate it. In Romans chapter 7, verse 12 and verse 14, Romans chapter 7, verse 12 and verse 14, Paul says the law is spiritual, the law is righteous, the law is good. Read these things and see that Torah is the yoke of heaven. It's a light yoke if you don't add all kinds of heavy weights on it, but it allows us certain things to do, and it forbids us certain things to do. Some things that our soul is desiring to have sometimes. Think of the first dietary law. We were not allowed to eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why? Why? 4 points. First, to remind you that the Creator exists and that He gave that order. So to take away the tree, you wouldn't have the opportunity to learn that principle, to remember that God is the boss. He's your Creator. He gives an order. Secondly, to bow down to His authority. To bow down to His authority. Number 3, to conquer your own pride and to say, I can do whatever I want. Freedom fighter, don't do it. If you want to be a priest, become an accountability bearer. And number 4, because good and evil, it's the tree of good and evil. There is no good and evil that you should want. That combination is a forbidden combination. It's either good that you want or bad. Choose for the good. Death and life. Don't choose death and life. Life and death. Choose life. That's what the Bible says. So what is more honest? To say that you hate, okay, you make that choice. Some people go overboard and say, and bend over backwards and say, okay, it's very horrible. Pork meat, oh, I don't like it at all. I hate it. Of course, it's not kosher and stuff like that. Or are you honest when you say that you like it? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says about this, you should not say, I don't like shatnez, which is a Jewish principle in the Bible of the combination of wool and linen. I don't like pork meat. You should say, I long those things, but what can I do? My Father in heaven has forbidden to do these things and to eat and to use these things. There are 4 animals that are mentioned in the Bible that are not clean, and they are mentioned in a special way, a little bit suspicious way, because it could have been done in a different way, and so there's a principle behind this. We're talking about 4 animals: the camel, the hyrax, the hare, some kind of a rabbit, but they're different, and a pig. Why did Torah not just say what the rule is, that you have two characteristics that make an animal clean or just unclean? Those two are the hoof needs to be cloven and they should regurgitate. Both of these things make the animal kosher. These four have one of the characteristics. One animal has this, the other animal has that, and so they're 50% okay, but the other 50% is not okay. And the rabbis made an interesting result, a conclusion out of this. They say you need to realize that some things are 50% okay, and some people say that's enough for me. And the rabbis say no, 50% is not enough. And don't come with the excuse that the Lord is looking at the heart. No, go for 100%. And this is why the animals have two characteristics to show that 50%, which some of these animals, and then those four are mentioned, the camel, the hyrax, the hare, and the pig, are mentioned, that they show why you shouldn't go for 50, but go for the 100%. And then they conclude that if you go for the 50%, you are a hypocrite. You are a hypocrite to show off with the 50%, and you give an extra attention to this thing that is good, and there is something else that you do, and this could be this corona division causing Facebook proclamations that some of us have, that defile you, and that defile and confuse and deceive other people. Stop with the confusion. Let things go. If you want to do something about really, if you really want to do something about the war in Ukraine, go and fight. Some people do that, or don't go and fight, because if you are NATO and people find out that you're NATO, we have another problem. But go and help people to go into refuge and into hiding and stuff like that. There is a Yiddish saying about this, and that is that you should not be a chazer fizzle. And the term chazer fizzle is a Yiddish term for a pig, a chazer, and the fizzle is the paw of the leg, the four legs of a pig, and the chazer fizzle is the symbol of 50% good and 50% not good at all. Go for the 100, otherwise you're a hypocrite. Why? Because when a pig is on the floor, is lying on the ground, they have the specific image of both legs showing, and you see their cloven hoofs, and you think, oh, this is kosher. The pig, as it were, is making you think, oh, this is kosher enough for me, while the animal is not kosher to eat. I'll show you the picture in the end, as if the pig is thinking, look at me, I have these kosher legs and I'm okay. So the themes today, besides the Parah, the Shabbat Parah, the Shabbat concerning the red cow, there is the inauguration of the desert shrine, the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. Secondly, the death of two of the four sons of the high priest, who were only 50% okay and not 100% okay on their first day of official being a priest. And the dietary laws. Those, in fact, four themes are central. Three of the four are the, as I said, the dietary laws, and two of the four sons who died, and this inauguration of the desert shrine that are central. And an extra text that I'm about to read about this red cow, in order, all in line with and all saying one and the same thing, which is priests should pay attention to these themes if they have the desire to grow. And all these things go about obedience, they go about spiritual discretion, they go about see when spiritual warfare is included, is reality, and choose the right side. It's very important. We get lessons in obedience, in showing that we are people who are if we go to the heavenly reality, God can bank on us. It's lessons also in being honest and not a sham, not a hypocrite, not doing religious, but following Torah with a heart that wants to serve God and people. Another example, if music is too loud, it can damage your ears, and when you do it, your ears are so much damaged, they are hardened in such a way that they cannot hear good sounds, softer sounds anymore. Likewise, when somebody is not keeping Torah, the Torah of good behavior, they will harden their hearts and they don't even like the good behavior. There are people that choose for their freedom above their accountability as grandma or grandpa or fellow believer, and they go wild on the Facebook situation and spread any news, whether fake or good news. And this is a world in which deception and confusing messages are wildfire. So it might be that you then, if you hear all these things and this warning that I'm giving, and you might experience this as an attack on your freedom. And I'm saying, get out of the freedom mode, get into the accountability mode. The second Torah text is coming up right now. It's from Numbers 19, verse 1 through 4. It's because of the instructions of the red heifer, the red cow. And it says, "Now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer, a red cow, without defect, in which there is no blemish, and upon which a yoke has never come. And you shall give her to the Eleazar the priest, and she shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of the blood with his finger and sprinkle some of her blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times, as if this priest with that blood is cleaning but also guarding the entrance of the tent of meeting from priests who are going for 50%, like 2 of the sons of Aaron who died because of that. So there is the cleansing with the cleansing water. Which animal is being used? A cow. Yes, a red cow. Why red? It looks like the golden image of a cow when the people of Israel were making this when Moses was on the Mount Sinai, taking too long to stay with God. And that is strange, because how can an animal that was such an expression of these great mistakes, a grave mistake, how can that kind of an animal take another animal? How can this animal be used as a sign of forgiveness? But it's interesting because this is confrontational therapy. Think of the serpent in the desert. That was a commandment of God to Moses. Raise up a pole with a copper serpent on it, and people will be confronted with the same image of this copper animal that is also the animal on the ground, biting them and poisoning them. And people need to realize, because of the common image of the serpent in the air and the serpents on the ground, oh, I'm going through something and I have such pain and it's life-threatening and I'm so sad and so lonely, but I need to realize that what I'm going through is not a cause in my life, but a result. I am the cause. And when people realize that, forgiveness, healing, correction, and good things are then coming and following. So there is a confrontation of that what is going on, being raised on a stick. And same thing with Yeshua, who was raised also, there is a text about this in the Bible, also to show to people who have eyes to see this, see what happens when our mistakes come to a culmination and to a top and to a maximum where we harden our hearts so much that there is no way back. Here is your Messiah dying because of your mistakes. Don't look at him and say, oh, how bad. Or saying, oh, those Jews, they did it again. No, it was the Romans who killed Yeshua. And moreover, it's Yeshua who allowed them to do it because this was part of his plan of salvation. And for people who have spiritual eyes, they realize I need to correct my way of thinking, my way of observation, whom I am seeing as the real cause, also in the case of Ukraine, the real cause of the misery, and who are the victims. Don't turn those things around. So interesting to have this cleansing water, which is a confrontational therapy for people who see this. It's not there anymore at this moment, but the images speak for themselves. Let's go to the Haftarah text, Ezechiël 36, verse 24 through 27. But also see that this cleansing water is also part of the spiritual growth process of priests, also in our own days. The Haftarah text, Ezechiël 36, starting with verse 24. I will take you from the nations. Israel is dispersed, is in the great diaspora. I will take you from the nations, also from the grave, which is a different text in Ezekiel, but now from the nations, and I will gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land, back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleannesses, which is an interesting image again, what we're talking about. And I hope you realize that this it's a difficult word, uncleannesses, has to do also with this corona madness, and now with the Ukraine craziness. We need to have, in these practical examples, also exert and to see what is my position as a priest, and not only as a citizen of my country. And you shall be clean from all your uncleannesses, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. And a new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will I'll take out of your flesh the heart of stone, and give you a heart of flesh. This already happened because when Israel was brought to the land again, these things took place, and are taking place, and will take place. And I will put my spirit within you, cause you to walk in my statutes, and be careful to observe my my ordinances. So the defiling, the contamination is something that is not so easy to stop. In the end, it's the Lord who is needed in order to make us clean. And to get really clean, you need a new heart, this text says. Hardened heart need to be soft, and they cannot, so we need to get a new heart. There's so much hardening that the Lord says, whatever you do, doesn't help. it's better to, whatever your best, I'm doing my best. It's not enough, so it's better to take the heart out and get a new heart of not of stone but of flesh. It's a spiritual way that this Ezechiël is using. It's the image of the hopeless situation for people who think that they can do this themselves. You need to allow God to do it, and in order to allow God to do it, you need as first step to see that you need this cleansing because you are unclean. That's a first very important observation that we need to make. In terms of Corona and Ukraine, we need to realize my observation and my conclusion and my thinking might be totally defiled. What if the opposite of what I'm thinking is true? We all need to do that and then come to hopefully the good conclusions. We cannot both be right, saying the opposite things. So this I cannot do it myself should not lead to being lazy. I cannot do it myself anyway, but to a modesty and to really a low state of a lack of pride. I cannot do it myself. I need you, God. So if you still think that there is a worldwide misleading of press and of governments, and you curse your government as some people do also in Holland, also in our congregation, realize that this also happened in the time of Hitler, where certain press agents serving in his army were doing a great a job in misleading and deceiving people. And yet when those people were deceived, they belonged to the Hitler clan. Same thing now with Putin. He also has people who are experts in deceiving crowds, so much so with YouTube and with Telegram and Instagram and all these social media. And people say, oh yes, I know it because I read it on the internet. Yes, you read a troll account of Mr. Putin. And there are people who are their followers in countries like Holland, where we have a party that is really pro-Putin and pro everything that is so wrong, that it is sad to see that those people get the right of talking, and while they're so anti-democratic. Yes, there's a democracy, but people who are anti-democratic should not be given the right to speak, because they are damaging democracy by every word they say, even threatening in our country, even threatening in our parliament, House of Parliament, even threatening colleagues in that same parliament with we will get you, we'll get you in tribunals and we will judge and stuff like that. Really, really sad and dangerous. I hope that insight and return, change and spiritual growth will then be the result. Let's go to the third main text, or the fourth if you want, the Berit Chadashah, the New Testament. It's Hebrew chapter 10, the letter to the Messianic Jews, chapter 10, verse 19 through 23. Therefore, brothers and sisters, brethren, since we have confidence to enter, in a minute I will tell you where this confidence comes from. Since we have confidence to enter the sanctuary by the sacrifice of Yeshua, by the new and living way which he opened for us through the curtain, that is his body. It's a mystical way of talking about temple being a body. In the New Testament you find that imagery more often. And since we have a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water, in order to become 100% instead of 50. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. This is said to people believers who have the desire to worship God, especially in that time of the first Mikdash, this desert shrine which was so pure and holy. And he is talking also against people who are not having this confidence. This is why this letter to the Hebrews is written, because there is an upcoming group of people who trust themselves more than trusting in Yeshua, trusting more on revelations, so-called revelations, than on sober and dull reality, and trusting more the fake news than the real facts and the testimonies of people like the victims in Ukraine. No, it's not true. No, I cannot, and can just throw it away. I don't listen. I don't want to hear the facts. People who have more value in angels than in Yeshua himself, while Yeshua is above them. He's God in a human form, and people who believe more in conspiracy theories than in honest news with knowledge of history. Very important. Please do a study in history, historical study in how the Soviet Union fell apart and how the right was given to countries in order to become independent nations and develop their own thinking and their own right to make news and stuff like that, instead of the Soviet Union where everything was predicted and the prisons were full with innocent people. Read about this and then see how this right to them was given without weapons, and now this right that they had is stolen from them with weapons. That's what's going on. In Revelation chapter 2 verse 9, there are people described there that attach more value to their false identity as interesting Jews than their real identity as dull non-Jews. Read Revelation 2 verse 9, it's on the screen. I know your tribulation, poor people. This text is taken to the innocent, good, vulnerable believers. I know your tribulation. I know your poverty, says Yeshua in a revelation to the apostle John, who was then of age. Although you are rich. And the slander of other people to those who say that they are Jews, but they're not, because they are synagogue of the sham. I translated this word Satan. It's a difficult word, Satan, in the Bible. You need to really make a study of what it means in order to say, oh, I know what that means. Don't do it too fast, because it's a difficult word. If you want to know who Satan is, go to the book of Job, first chapter, and read how interesting this Satan is, who has the right to talk in a meeting. Satan gets the right to speak. He has the floor, and he speaks with God directly. So it's a much more complicated situation to explain who Satan is. So I translated it with sham. Some of these people say that from themselves. I'm the Jew. I know. Sometimes people say, "Oh, you must be a Jew," and it's some kind of a pedestal building. So also this text of Revelation chapter 3, verse 9. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of the sham, those who say that they are Jews and they're not, but they lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet and learn that I loved you. The interesting description of people who are on the wrong path, and they turn around and come back and say we were wrong. That's a nice, hopeful sign. So this is what we're talking about. All these things are there. The writer, the author of the letter to the Hebrews, to the Messianic Jews, is asking, in fact, this question. Do you really want to enter the sanctuary? Do you really want to enter the temple? Do you want reality? Then, in order to do that, in order to make that possible, make sure that it doesn't go about you. It doesn't go about you are a Jew or not a Jew and you're paying much attention to that, which some people do. And definitely when you say that you're Jewish while you're not. The central figure which you need to focus on when you go through your dark tunnel and you enter the light is Yeshua. In the Midrash Rabbah, which is a Jewish rabbinical document on the 5 books of the Torah, and in the second volume on Shemot, on Exodus, there is a description of Messiah where it talks about an angel of God who's leading the group of fleeing, traveling Jewish people. This angel is leading this whole group. He's in the front, and this angel is called Metatron. He's not just an angel, he's Metatron, which is a Greek loan word from the Greek language, incorporated into the Hebrew language, meaning next to or close to the throne, Metatron. So spiritual rabbis who have seen much more of the spiritual realm than many people can see in churches have realized that this angel has a very special, specific meaning and a special role. He's the Metatron. He's the one sitting next to God, and he is Messiah not only because the name of God is in him. It says the description says a little bit more. God says, you have not behaved so well, Jewish people. I wish I could do this myself, but because not of you didn't, I will send my angel and he will guide you. Listen to him. There's no forgiveness in him, only forgiveness with me, but do this. This Metatron is also mentioned in the older Machzor for Yom Kippur and Machzor for Rosh Hashanah. And there, the name of this Metatron, the Metatron is only a description of where he stands, the nickname, as it were, but the name of that angel is called Yeshua, literally. The name of Yeshua. Messianic Jews know this name and they say, this is the name of the Messiah, Yeshua. That same name you find, I've seen this name in these older Machzorim written. So the core of Jewish leaders know what I'm talking about today when I say that Messiah is already known to the Jewish people as Yeshua is the name in which we need to put our trust. Only through him you can enter this so desired sanctuary by the sacrifice of this not guilty Metatron Yeshua. We grow in the self-confidence. That's the word I was going to explain a little bit later. Now I'm doing it. You get this confidence because you know God is loving me so much, cares about me so much, that I have the confidence that I'm wanted, that I'm desired. I can be there. God knows me. The world is not complete without me. This Metatron has been punished with punishment, although he is not guilty of anything. Jews know this. That good news is known in Judaism, and so it's very important to see this and see this significance. Yeshua loves us, sacrifices himself. That creates trust. The curtain is his body, is his sacrifice. Only through his sacrifice, meaning confrontational therapy, realizing that his sacrifice was necessary for me to be able to enter the heavenly spheres, only through his body that died and also raised from the claws of death, is it possible to get into this sanctuary, this heavenly sanctuary in the world to come, in the Olam Haba. There he is the boss, Yeshua, the high priest of the order which is mentioned in Psalms 110. Let me read it to you. It's on the screen as well. The Lord has sworn, he will not change his mind. You, Yeshua, are the priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, the righteous king. And in Hebrews 10:22, it's also mentioned how these hearts, which Ezechiel also talked about, and which his whole study is about, which is don't go for 50 but for 100. So be clean, become clean of all the division making, all the deception that's going on in the world. Become clean. Hebrews 10:22. I read it to you. Let us draw near. Let us draw near. Us, not you only. No freedom fighter, accountability bearer. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Truth, not false identity or other hiding places. If you want to hold on to something, in verse 23 it says what it should be. 23 was also on the screen. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. So again, what did we talk about? We talked about the inauguration of the desert shrine. We talked about the death of 2 of the 4 sons of the high priest. 50% of the priests were, or 50 or a little bit more, it's 5 people. But anyway, close to not being acceptable on their first official day of being agents in the shrine that's pointing at the heavenly shrine. And then the dietary laws, and the 4th thing, of course, not mentioned in those 3 that I showed to you before were shown to you before in the slides, was this red heifer, this red cow, burned to ashes, and the ashes were put into water with some ingredients in order to be clean. Priests need to be clean. Priests need to be obedient. Priests need to see their own limitations. We get lessons here, people. We get lessons in obedience, in showing that we are people who the Lord can trust on us and have us in His heavenly places, safely for Him as well. Lessons in being honest and not being a sham and a hypocrite. And why all these commandments? In order to remind ourselves that the Creator exists and gives His commandments. Secondly, to bow down for His authority. Thirdly, to conquer our own pride and our own confidence that we know all these facts. Fourth, because good and evil don't go together. Last word about Corona and Ukraine. Why have so much extensive talk about it in this study? Because from contacts with leaders from congregation in Israel and England and in America, I hear, North and South America, I hear that people all over the world are massively lied to, deceived. And then they become, some of them become deceivers themselves because they believe the fake news. Fake accounts of Russians, but also political parties like in our country, spread massive deception. My task is to warn against that. So forgive me if you didn't realize what I was doing. This is what I'm doing right now. So don't be this hypocrite where 50% is okay and another 50% is not so okay. Don't be it's on the screen, the text. Don't be a kosher paw of a pig. Don't be, in Yiddish we say, du sollst nicht sein a kosher chazer-fizzle. Don't be a kosher paw of a pig. And there is a picture that we also have for you in order to show how beautiful this pig is lying down and enjoying the mud and his own droppings, or her, and showing her nails being polished and everything, to show the good part and the bad part, at least for us people who enjoy the dietary laws. We need to realize that good and bad don't go together. the fruit of good and evil, of the tree of good and evil. Bad news. At the calling of Israel, at the calling of this spiritual, prophetic, priestly behavior, there is a connection with royal, kingly behavior. We are going to be part of the visible kingdom of God. That kingdom already exists. It's invisible, but it's there. And that kingdom is not here on earth yet. The visible that you can visit in Jerusalem. What we did wrong the first time in the Garden of Eden, the paradise situation, the Lord will not return to that same and allow that same mistake to happen. So our whole life now is an exercise for the coming time. Ask yourself the question if you, with your present behavior, would fit in this beautiful kingdom of God. Don't say yes too quickly. Realize that the first time with the Garden of Eden, there was no second chance. There was immediately the exile for all of humanity. So today it's enough pointers to choose the right choice and the right direction with Yeshua as the angel, as your guide, as your Messiah. And with that, I wish you a good remainder, if that's still the case, depending on where you live in the world, good remainder of the Shabbat, and I wish you a healthy life without Corona and without the fake news concerning Ukraine. Think of the victims living there, the poor people burying their own children or their own parents while bombs and bullets fly around their ears. It's good to have this angel, Yeshua, as your guide, the one who cares so much about you. Shabbat Shalom.